Hey you guys, I've been wanting to make this video for such a long time. I get asked this question, how to price your artwork, how to price your illustration, from students, from people from my blog, from people from YouTube, from people that I meet in the illustration community all the time. And so I thought I'll put it down in video form, and that way I can email it out to people whenever I get asked. So pretend I'm talking to you directly on the phone, or maybe at school, or maybe somewhere where we've met at a conference or something like that. Okay, so let's start with the Graphic Artists Guild Pricing and Ethical Guidelines book. I do not like this book. Now, this is an opinion, and I'm going to express it. I think I'm allowed to do that. I think this book belongs here. Now, that's for me. Okay, now you may love this book, and that's fine. You can love this book. I don't. I have been told by friends in other industries that every single industry, from people making houses to computing, servicing computer software, has a book in their industry on how to price their work, and it just doesn't work. Okay, and that's what I'm going to try to explain in this video is why it doesn't work and why everybody wants to have a price. Everybody wants that magical number, and they want to be told, this is what you should price, or this is what you should charge for your work, okay? Now, I do want you to know that I'm in danger of, speaking out against the Graphic Artists Guild, because they sued Brad Holland, Cynthia Turner, Ken Dabrowski, Bruce Lehman, former commissioner of the U.S. Patent Office, and Terry Brown, director of the Society of Illustrators, for speaking against them. So I realize I'm at risk, but I'm saying, Graphic Artists Guild, look, I have an opinion, deal with it. Okay, if you want to come after me, come after me. Now, one thing that we need to agree on before we get started is the value of products, value of goods and services. So let's take a water bottle, for example, because everybody's familiar with a water bottle. Okay, so maybe a water bottle might cost somewhere around $1.69 at your local convenience store. Now, let's say you're out one day and you're going out and about, and you've got a water bottle, or hopefully you brought your stainless steel water bottle in your car, and you go into the convenience store to pay for your gas and maybe to pick up some other things. How much is one of their bottled waters worth to you? If you've already got water in your car, you're not going to spend $1.69 on it. It's not worth $1.69. That's too much. If you left your home and you didn't bring water with you, and you're very thirsty and it's a summer day and you need a bottle of water, and you go in the store, you might spend $1.69 on a bottle of water. It might be worth it. Same person, different day, different circumstance. If you got stuck in the desert and you had to walk 10 miles in 100-degree heat, and you made it to a convenience store, luckily, and you go in there and they've got water bottle for $10 a bottle, you're probably going to spend $10 if there's no other way to get water, and it'll be worth it to you. You might feel ripped off later, but at the time, when you're laying down the cash, you're going to want that water bottle, and you're probably going to want to buy a bunch of them at $10 a piece. Okay, so my point there is we have to establish that at different times in your life, services, goods are worth different amounts of money. Okay? So what would happen if you used the book to price, or you quoted the book? Well, it would probably go something like this. You would get an email from a client expressing interest in your work and asking you for a price for X amount of work. And most people are more comfortable emailing the quote back. I am. That way you don't worry about choking on your words. Talking about money is usually never an easy thing to do. So you send in your quote based on the book, and you're probably likely to get one of three scenarios. One, you get an email or a call back going, perfect, let's get to work. That never happens. I mean, that's happened rarely when I'm throwing out the number. It just doesn't happen, especially if you quote that book. The second scenario is you get an email back saying, well, you're way too high. Can you come down? So now what do? Well, if you're set on the book being right and quoting from that book, then you kind of need, if that's your basis, you kind of need to hold to it. And a lot of people I know have said, well, that's the going rate, that's the price, and that's what my price is, and usually they'll lose the job. And I want to talk about that a little bit later. because there's a lot of jobs that you probably don't want to lose, but if you hold to that book, you're probably going to lose them. And then the third, probably the most likely scenario, is that you won't hear or see anything come in your inbox. Nothing will happen, and then you'll wonder, did they get my quote? You start second guessing. Maybe I need to call them. And if you call them or email them, they'll usually say, oh, we went with someone else. They won't tell you that you were too high, and you might not know. It could be another reason too. But usually if you send a quote in and it's too high, a lot of times a client won't try to talk you down. They'll just find someone else. So let's talk about some ways that I think will really help you in sending in a good bid, a good price that you can really stand behind and feel good about if you do lose the assignment. So let's look at some prices of textbooks. So I've been asked in the past, and I'm actually doing a job right now for a textbook, a couple different ones, where and this is the price that I'm putting on the screen right now is for a full page illustration. I have been paid or been asked to work for as low as $800 for a full page, all the way up to $4,000 for a full page, and gotten the $4,000 price quite a few times. I've also gotten everything in between. So there's a huge range there. This is why it's a huge problem to try to get a price out of a book and to be able to hold a client to a specific price, and we'll talk about that later too. Editorial, I've actually worked for $100, one of my first illustrations for the Delaware Lawyer magazine, all the way up to $1,500 for a full page. So you can see a huge gap in price there. How in the world is a book going to tell you what to charge when there's that much of a discrepancy? Everything in between again. And then in children's books, I've heard of people being asked to do them for as little as $1,000. I know people that have done them for $3,000 or $4,000, and I get somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 in advance for doing a full 32-page children's picture book. Now, I do think it's very important to be able to understand what people are getting. So even knowing the range is important, but you don't need to pay for that book to get the range, and that book isn't going to give you the full range anyway. It just doesn't do it. It's good to know that people don't get paid $100,000 to do a children's book. It's also good to know that people typically don't get paid $5 to do a children's book. But there's such a huge range there that's why I'm going to try to help you understand a better way to price your work. Let's look at some assignments, and let's talk about the motivations for doing assignments. So number one, I think what most people do is they say, well, how much am I going to get paid? And that's the first question they ask. And that's actually, I think, the backwards way of going about it. I think the questions that you should be asking yourself is, why am I going to do this job, or why am I considering this job? And so those are the things. And to me, I've boiled them down to about basically four different reasons for doing it. One, it's going to be really fun to do because the reason you're an artist is because it's fun. So that's why you're doing art in the first place. So it should be fun. A lot of times assignments aren't fun. And so you need to know before you get into it, you need to have a serious conversation with yourself and decide, is this going to be fun or not? The next thing is money, is compensation. How much money are you going to get paid? Definitely going to talk about that. And is that the only reason you're going to do the job? Or is money part of the equation of why you want to do it? What about experience? We spend tens of thousands, sometimes some people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn and get their college education. So experience is very valuable and a very valid reason for wanting to do an assignment, because it might give you and stretch you and give you the kind of experience that you feel that you need to grow, that could lead to other jobs and other potential money-making projects. And then the last one is service. So you might be wanting to do it to help someone else out. I personally, with service, I think that's probably the worst reason to do art, to make art, is to serve someone else. Now, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't explain this. I'm making this video right now, and this is a service thing. I'm putting it on YouTube. It's free, okay? So I am serving you, hopefully, if you like it, and I'm serving other people by making this video. But I'm doing it because I want to. I'm not doing it because someone asked me to, and it's a very different thing. Someone could ask you to draw something or paint something that you would go, wow, I would love to do that. And then it's the exact thing that you would want to work for. That's the exception. That's rare. Usually when people ask you to do something or want you to do something, say it's a friend or a family member, and they want you to illustrate their book, or they want you to illustrate a poster or something for them, chances are, from my experience, you're not going to like what they want you to do. It's not what you would choose to do on your own. It's not the subject matter that you will enjoy. And so what happens is it ends up often becoming that thing that you regret ever getting into, the thing you regret agreeing to, and you wish you hadn't, and so you end up procrastinating, and it becomes a painful experience to make this art when really it should be really fun. Okay, so these are the motivations, are the thing that you really need to hone in on and know why you're doing the piece of art that you're getting ready to do, or why you're considering doing it. It could be a combination of these four things, but you need to know why you're doing it. If it's only for the money, then you need to make sure you're getting the maximum amount of money. Okay, let's put this into some sort of a grid here, into some sort of an axis, kind of a graph. So on the horizontal axis, we're going to say that that's the compensation that you're going to look to get. And then on the vertical axis, that's going to be how much you want to do it. You know, how bad or how little you want to do this project. Okay, and then obviously compensation is going to be pretty easy. We don't pay for things with chickens and ducks and goats and milk, gallons of milk anymore, so we're talking about money. And then on the desire, we're definitely talking about how bad or how little you really want to do this project for the project itself. In other words, if money were not an issue, if money were not being paid at all, would you want to do this project anyway? You know, because there are some projects that I've done where I have they were printed. Let me give you an example. One project that I did for the Delaware Lawyer magazine that I did way back in the beginning of my career in 1993 was a full-page ad, but it was the client said, you can do anything you want. This full page is yours. All you have to do is relate your art to the story. And the story was about a poetry reading, and it was just a really fun story that they put in the back of the magazine. And I read through it and I thought, man, I get to do anything that I want on this page, and it's going to be printed, and I'm going to get the experience, and yeah, I'm going to make $100, and the $100 isn't going to be worth the time involved, but because I get to do whatever I want, because I'll have a printed piece at the end of the day, this is totally worth it. So the desire was really high on the scale, but the compensation was really low. But that put me in kind of this sweet spot area. And so if we look at this right here, I think this is kind of a range of where you need to be hitting in order to really feel good about your job. Now, I've done work before, and I'm not going to name companies because I don't think that would be ethical, but I've done work for some Fortune 500 companies in the past, and a few of them have been really painful to work for. Not most of them, but a few of them have been, where it was art directed so heavily that when I finally got into the project, I was hating it so bad. But I was getting $5,000-$10,000 for doing this project that was going to take me 2 or 3 days, and so it was easy to do because it was like, wow, I hate this art so much, but wow, I'm getting so much money for it that it's going to be totally worth it. And I'm a total prostitute, whore, whatever you want to call it, but at the end of the day, I was still out there in that sweet spot. And I think that this is the thing that most people overlook, is really asking themselves, you know, the hard and the tough questions on where and why they're going to, or more why they're going to take on an assignment. Sometimes your project might end up somewhere in the middle where you really don't really want to do it, but it's not that painful. But now you're worried about not making enough money because you want to hit that sweet spot out there. Okay, so that's going to get us into the next thing. Now remember, we talked. Of course, I talked about the fact that that I don't like pricing out of a book. I don't like getting a number right out of a book. And you're probably still going, well, but that can really help. And so let's attack that problem right now. Okay, so let's look at a Van Gogh painting and a can of Coke. Both are products. Both are objects that could be sold. And one of the reasons why I think that pricing out of a book really doesn't work is because a can of Coke has a fixed price, whereas a painting doesn't. A work of art is something that's very individual. Your art might be worth more than my art. My art might take more time to create than yours. Yours might have more details in it than mine. Mine might be more emotional. Yours might be more fun. Hers might be more clever. His might be more robust. I mean, there's no way to compare them. You can't take two pieces of art and go, well, these are of equal value. They just aren't. Okay, for pricing, here's my rule number one. Try to get your client to throw out the first price. Now, this doesn't always work, but if you can, it's to your advantage. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're thinking, let's use one example. I'm going to give you an assignment example, and we'll use it as to talk about here. So let's say there's a client, they want you to do 5 illustrations of guys in business suits lifting boxes up and stacking them, maybe showing teamwork or something like that, a conceptual piece. Not something that I would really want to paint. That's kind of where I started my career doing, but I don't like doing that. So if I go back to my scale again, and I look at the pleasure pain scale, it would be really low on the desire level. So I don't know if it'd be clear down with where I hate my life, but it might be, I wish I was digging ditches, or I'm really bored. It's somewhere in there. So I'm definitely going to want the money to be higher. So I really want them to throw out that price first, because I might be thinking, well, it'd be really worth it to do it for $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, somewhere in there. But I have no idea what the client is thinking. So if I throw out a number first and say, I'll do it for $2,000, the client might say, fine, that's great. And then I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to go, I wonder if I could have got more. What if the client was thinking, well, we have a budget of $4,000, but we'll see what the illustrator is going to charge first, and that's usually what they'll do. That's smart business. You can't fault a client for being smart. So that's the first thing, is see if you can get them to throw out the number. Let me give you a real quick story on where I actually made $10,000, give or take, in about a minute's time on the phone. So I got a call from my rep, Joanne Shuna, and she happened to be in Hawaii at the time. And this was for a project. We were thinking, based on the amount of artwork that they were asking for, this was for a Halloween promotion for all the stores in the whole country, for all the candy for Halloween. And they sent over the amount of artwork that they needed, and we called each other and we're talking on the phone. We were thinking, well, do you think they have $15,000 or $20,000 for this? Is that what should we ask for that? I don't know. And so we thought, well, maybe we'll ask for $20,000. So there's a difference between an art buyer and an art director. And at big advertising agencies and design firms, sometimes they have an art buyer and an art director. The art buyer is responsible for doing the bidding and pricing. That's one of their jobs, and handling the money side of the art. The art director handles the art side. The art buyer had sent me an email saying, we need to get your price your bid, so we can decide if we're going to work with you, if we're going to hire someone else. But we need to get that bid in here ASAP, because we got to get started on the project. And so then I had already talked to the art buyer, or the art director, earlier, and she had said, yeah, we really need to get going, and she sent me over some sketches and stuff, and so I just thought on the off chance, what if I call the art director and just ask what their budget is? Maybe they'll give it. Now, I knew we were supposed to send over a bid, but I just thought, it won't hurt to make a phone call. So I called the art director and I said, hey, I'm just wondering if, what your budget is, because I want to make sure that we can come in, that it's going to work for us. And she said, well, in our meeting today, we were thinking that as long as you're not too much over $30,000, we should be fine. And I was about dying on the phone because I knew that my rep was going to fax over, this is back when we used fax machines, that she was going to fax over that bid with $20,000 on it. So I hurried up and called her back and said, you haven't sent that bid in yet, have you? And she says, no, why? And I go, because they have $30,000. So guess where our bid came in? It's like $29,500. So we made $10,000 just from a phone call. So that's why you always want to get the client to throw out the first number. And I've had that happen quite a few times where the client was willing to pay more than I was willing to ask for. Sometimes it happens in reverse. Sometimes the client throws out the price and you go, whoa, that's not enough money. I can't do it for that. That's where this scale, this compensation scale, comes in handy, because then you can really look at it and make decisions on where you think you are. Okay, so rule number 2 is, if they don't throw out the first number, you need to figure out what your bottom line is. Again, consult the scale here. Okay, so go back to your motivation. How bad do I want to do this? And you need to come up with kind of a figure in your head. This doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with what other people have been paid before. This doesn't have anything to do with what other people say you should be getting, or what you feel you're going to be getting ripped off if you get it for too low. This has to do with what kind of bills do you have to pay this month. Remember our water bottle example, right? Sometimes it's worth more. Sometimes you might have more financial obligations one month than you do another month. Sometimes all you need is money to pay that phone bill or that money to pay rent, and it's got to be paid, and you don't know where the money's coming from. And so doing something for $1,000 would be low, but you want to make sure you get that $1,000, because losing that job might mean that you don't get to make your rent payment. So how bad you need money could factor into this. Another thing is how much you're going to hate the assignment. If you're going to really, really hate it, and it's going to be like pulling hairs and pulling teeth, and you're going to end up procrastinating because you're hating it, you better be getting paid a lot of money. So again, you need to think of a number in your mind. So the game that you need to play with yourself is this. So let's go back to our illustrations, and if you have a project right now that you're trying to price, or you have one coming up that you're thinking of, you got to get it in your head and think about it and go, okay, so 5 illustrations of guys in business suits lifting up boxes over their head. Golly, would I do that for $1,500? No, I don't. No, I'd rather have my time than $1,500. I don't want to do it for $1,500. Okay, $2,500. I could pay my car payment, I could pay my rent, I could pay $2,500. How long is it going to take me? That factors in too. Okay, you need to know as much as you can about this job. You need to know how much time it's going to take you, how much is involved, how many figures are involved. It's not just guys in business suits. If it's 50 guys in business suits, that's going to matter too. So you need to know as many specifics as you can. $2,500, they only want 5 guys in each illustration. Most months I wouldn't do it, but this month I'm going to do it because I really need the money. So $2,500. Now you have to say, but would I do it for $2,000? Now, if you would do it for $2,000, then $2,500 isn't your bottom line. $2,000 might be your bottom line. What about $1,800? No, I would not do it for $1,800. The question you have to ask yourself is, would you be happy to lose it at $1,800? So, in other words, you go through this system, you figure out your bottom line, you hold to it with the client, and you have to be good at imagination. You got to be able to to imagine this. You hold out for $2,000. The client says, well, we'll give you $1,800. You say no. You hold your ground. No, I'll do it for $2,000. They email you back and go, forget it, we're going with someone else. You just lost that job. Now, you have to be happy. You have to be going, thank you, I'm so glad I don't have to do that job for $1,800. So that's how you find your bottom line. I gave this advice to a student one time. We figured out what the bottom line was together. And we asked questions back and forth, spent a lot of time. Would you do it for this? Would you do it for that? Would you do it for that? Would you do it? You wouldn't do it for that. You're sure you would not? Nope, I don't want to do it for that. The person held tight with the client. The client gave it to someone else. The student came back and got mad at me because that person said, I would have done it for this amount. Why did you gave me bad advice? And I said, you didn't find your bottom line then. You have to know what your bottom line is. The person's bottom line was obviously lower than they were letting on. Okay? So you have to know what that is. Now, once you know your bottom line, now some people might say, well, that's no good because you might be leaving a lot of money on the table. Well, we're going to try to account for that. So if the client will not budge and will not give you any indication of how much they're willing to pay, and it's all on you, this is where you're kind of stuck, and this is where you kind of have to figure out. So let's say for this assignment right here, this 5 illustrations, you decide, I'm willing to do it for $2,000. Okay, then I think you're in a position at that point to ask yourself, how bad, do you really need it at that point? Do you really need the job? Are you going to be really bummed if you don't get it for $2,000? If so, you may want to ask for $3,000. I would normally say, go ahead and double your bottom line and ask for $4,000. You'll look silly if you ask for 5 and then you're willing to come down to 2. That means your price had no meaning at all. But if you're up at 4,000 and you're willing to come down to 2, you're still in the range. I mean, you're kind of close. If you're asking for 10,000 but you're willing to do it for 2, your price had no meaning at all. So I would say you can as much as double what your bottom line is. And then if you double it and you say, I want $4,000 for this, and they go, great, that's awesome. You should be about double happy. Now, you still may have left money on the table, but that's the plight of a contractor. That's what happens. That's business. That happens every day. Sometimes you want to maximize. I guarantee you, your client has a number in their mind. They know how much they're willing to pay. And what you're hoping to do is stretch them. Now, here's one last tip. Okay? This is one last tip to be able to get the price out of the client. And I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot. Clients, you should not be watching this because this is a tactic. Okay, so one thing that you can do is, a lot of business and a lot of value is perception. So one tip that I always give my students is, especially like when you're looking at your calendar, if someone says, hey, I'd like you to do this project, and the deadline is we would need it in 3 weeks. The worst thing you can say is, oh, that's awesome. I have plenty of time. No one else out there is hiring me. You're the only one. 3 weeks is plenty of time. I can get that done because I got nothing else going on. No, the opposite. The 3 weeks is going to be pushing me a little bit. Is there any way we could push it back to the next weekend, or that I could have a few more days, or even another week or two? And it's all perception, and we all do this. It's like if you're at a yard sale and you pick up a baseball mitt and you're thinking, well, that's kind of a neat baseball mitt. I might get that. And they only want $5. That's really worth it. But, you're kind of also thinking, well, maybe I don't really need it, and it is a nice mitt, but it's not that nice, and maybe you're going to set it down. I guarantee you, if someone else comes to that yard sale and picks up that mitt, then all of a sudden the value on that mitt just went up. Because now you're going, why didn't I get that? Now I can't get it. There's a supply and demand issue. That's what you want to create with your own work, with your clients. You want them to look at you and go, wow, this person, maybe I'm making a really good choice here with this person because they're obviously busy. They've got things going on. Okay, So that's kind of the perception that you want to put out there. And you can do the same thing with pricing. And what you do is, and this is my last little tip here, is what you can say is, you know, I love, and this is one thing that you want to do, whether you, I mean, if you want to do the project, sometimes you can stretch the truth a little bit. Some people don't mind stretching the truth at all. Some people have a hard time with it. You have to be comfortable. But you could say, you know, whether you really want to do it or not, you can say, gosh, you know, I really, really want to do these 5 illustrations of guys lifting up boxes and stacking them to show teamwork. And that would be a really fun project, and I would really love to do it. My problem is I'm really busy right now, and I'm worried because I know with the economy I'm getting asked to do projects all the time that are really, you know, the budgets are really small. And so, you know, why don't you tell me what your budget is, and then, you know, maybe we can work with you. Maybe there's some way that we can work around it, and maybe you put them on the defensive and say, you know, I don't think that you have enough money. I don't think that you are going to be able to hire me. And that might get them to come out of the woodwork and go, well, you know, we can't really do anything more. We've got $5,000 and that's all we have to work with. So we can't really go any more than that, but if you can work with that, now you just made an extra $1,000 on top of the $4,000. I mean, it happens. But if they will agree to whatever you're willing to ask for. So if you ask for $2,000 and they're willing to pay $5,000, they're going to be very willing to pay you too. And you know, I'm a business owner now, and we contract with other people to do things for other services and different things like that. And as a businessman, I've got to tell you, that's good business. You have to do that. So as an artist, unfortunately you have to also learn how to become a businessman, businesswoman, and learn some of these strategies, and they can help you with pricing. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Again, I think the most important thing is figuring out where your bottom line is and then working up from there so that you're very comfortable when you get to that bottom line. If the client goes below just a hair, just $100 below, it's thank goodness I don't have to do this job now. That's my advice. Again, this is an opinion. Sorry, Graphic Artists Guild. That's my opinion. And thanks for watching my video.